and I'd see the next thing I had to say, and I said, God, I don't want to go through this again. Jeez, I hate this bit, blah, 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 and I would do it. So I was going to quit. I decided 12 years in that I was going to quit comedy. I'm not doing this anymore. The phrase I use is I call it growing a tumor on my soul. I just could no longer tolerate my lameness, is what I'll call it, lameness. And so I decided to do something different. I wrote this bit called "We Need Comedy to Get Rid of Our Desire to Kill."
But one of the things that I admire about you is, number one, your output and your consistency, but the fact that it's always consistently at a high quality. And again, that doesn't happen by accident. We've talked about process a little bit on Sundays before, but I want to know, how is it that you are so consistently working at a high level and have done so for essentially 40 years?
It's weird because it wasn't always like that. When I started comedy, my entire thing was to be Bill Cosby, who was one of my heroes until he became super rapey. So I wrote stories. I have old video. We're going to put it up. Actually, we're going to kind of cut together a compilation of how horrible I was when I started, but it was all energy and there was no substance. And I started to hate myself. I was 12 years in. I was headlining clubs and local and B clubs and stuff, and I was making more money than my dad made, which wasn't a whole lot. But I was doing okay, and I started to really hate myself. And here's why I started to hate myself. I started to hate myself because I realized what I was doing on stage had no value to it. It was just, now laughter's value. People say, oh, you're making people laugh. It's value. Yeah, but I was doing it with tricks and devices, and there was no Carlin insight. There was no Robin Williams insight. There was no, there was nothing in it that people could take away. And I saw Lily Tomlin do Signs of Intelligent Life years and years ago when she was first working on it. It's this one-person show where she plays like 10 characters in it, but holy crap, man. My manager at the time made me go watch it, and I watched it, and I was like, I don't know, maybe 20, 21 at the time. And it was in San Francisco at the Great American Music Hall, and I watched it. And at one point, Lily Tomlin is doing 4 characters at one time, having a conversation, a very funny conversation. And she was so good at it that I saw every character as she was switching characters. And then, being a performer, I realized, holy shit, she's doing 4 people at one time having a conversation, and I saw the 4 people. I didn't see one person doing it. And that's when I realized I needed to quit comedy and never do comedy again, because there's no way I was going to be that good. And I'm still not that good. So I walked out that day with a different mindset of comedy. And I started doing these bits. I did a bit about when Reagan was later in Reagan, at the end of Reagan's presidency, about Russia. This Russian guy comes to America and he tries to buy a Playboy magazine, but the Mormons had just bought a 7-Eleven, so he couldn't get a Playboy at 7-Eleven. So he thought, what's happening to America? We're losing our. And it was this bit where I played this Russian character the entire time. I went way deep into all this other shit because of Robin and Lily Tomlin, but I still was doing club comedy, which is talking, just doing whatever it took to get by. Stories about this, but remember when you were a kid, never go to the store and buy stuff. It was just lame. And then I started to hate it. About 12 years in, I started to hate myself, where I'd be on stage and a bit would come. You, as a comic, you have a list of show. You do a show a certain way, and you have a bit list in your head, or it's on a notepad, and it's on a piece of paper on the stool that you're reading. And I'd see the next thing I had to say, and I said, God, I don't want to go through this again. Jeez, I hate this bit, blah, 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 and I would do it. So I was going to quit. I decided 12 years in that I was going to quit comedy. I'm not doing this anymore. The phrase I use is I call it growing a tumor on my soul. I just could no longer tolerate my lameness, is what I'll call it, lameness. And so I decided to do something different. I wrote this bit called "We Need Comedy to Get Rid of Our Desire to Kill." I wanted to throw everything I did out and try something. But the bit starts out, comedians hit the stage, Zach, they're like, hey, how you doing? Well, you guys feeling good? Everybody good? Right? So, and that went on everybody. That's how everybody starts every show ever. I walked on stage with this new bit and I went, do you guys even know why you're here? Is it because you like paying $4 for a beer? No, we're here tonight because comedy gets rid of our desire to kill. And the audience, the first, you can remember, this is when Seinfeld was huge, so no one was banging against this. Hicks, maybe, Hicks. But, and I remember doing it the first night. I was so scared of doing it. It was so far out of the wheelhouse I'd been working in that I took a buddy from my acting class, and I do this bit where it's the worst. It's in I put it in one of my later specials because when I wrote it, I wasn't good enough to pull it off. And it's this story about the worst day you can possibly have, from driving to work and spilling coffee to having HR department call you in because a woman at work said you molested her, and to you go to the boss and he starts this conversation with you're not fired, but and while he's ordering a Mercedes on the phone, and at the end of the last piece of the bit, and it's funny all the way through, I'm stabbing him in the chest with a letter opener, screaming, "I just need a good laugh." And then I would go to the audience, "And that's why you're here tonight." And the first night I did it, it's about 3.5 minutes long. It was at Igby's, a club that used to be downtown. And I knew, I brought my friend, told my buddy Eric, I said, "Get me out of here." I said, because they're going to hate me at the end of this bit. So you just need to get me out of there. They went nuts. Zach. They were like, "Yeah, well, I don't have anything else to do now. I have this one 3-minute bit. I got to do 15 minutes. And I have to fill 12 minutes, and I don't have anything in that genre." And here's where I learned, and I've told this story before, I learned the most important thing you can ever learn about performing in front of a live audience: authenticity. It was the first time in my career I'd ever been authentic. I was successful at my job, but I was unmemorable. This 3 minutes was the first time I got on stage and was totally 100% entirely authentic. I dropped right back into my old act to get through the next 12 minutes. Because I thought I was going to get booed off. I dropped in for the next 12 minutes, and the audience went dead silent. As I walked out, I was driving home like, wow, I was killing, and then I sucked. And I finally got that. The audience stopped liking me because all of a sudden, I started lying to them. They saw who I was. They saw what I wanted to do. And all of a sudden, I started lying to them. I told them the truth for 3 minutes, then I lied to them for 12. And they were like, "This guy." And that's what happened. And then that night I went home and I threw out 12 years of comedy, threw it out. And I started from scratch, and that's where Norman Rockwell's Bleeding came from.